Mr. Vice President, the clock is ticking to tonight when the deadline looms for avoiding bombing infrastructure in Iran.
Well, so you asked if there's new information, and I don't, unless I have a text message from Steve. Well, I do have a text message from Steve Witkoff. Wouldn't you like to know the subject of this message? But no, I need to read it first before I talk about it. But here's what time is it in the United States right now? Okay, that makes sense. All right. Okay, so Natalie, on this question of the deal, I really think there are two pathways. The president's been very clear about this. There are two pathways that this thing is ultimately going to end. First of all, the United States has largely accomplished its military objectives. There are still some things that we'd like to do, for example, on Iranian ability to manufacture weapons that we'd like to do a little bit more work on militarily. But fundamentally, the military objectives of the United States have been completed. So that means, as the president has said, very shortly this war is going to conclude. And I think the nature of the conclusion is ultimately up to the Iranians. I think there really are two pathways, and I'm oversimplifying this a little bit, but I think pathway one is where the Iranians decide they're going to be a normal country. They're not going to fund terrorism anymore. They're going to be part of the world system of commerce and exchange, and that's going to mean much better things for them economically. It's going to mean better things for the peace and safety of the world. It's going to mean a lot of good things for a lot of people all over the planet. That's option A. Okay. Option B is if the Iranians don't come to the table and they stay committed to terrorism, to terrorizing their neighbors, not just Israel, but of course their Arab neighbors too, then the economic situation in Iran is going to continue to be very, very bad, and frankly, it will probably get worse. And so what the president has asked his entire team to do, particularly Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, is to figure out what are the contours of a potential deal. What are they willing to do? Because militarily, it frankly doesn't matter one way or the other to us. It's fundamentally a question of what does this look like afterwards, and that has been what the negotiations have been focused on. And the president's also been very clear that while the Iranians are trying to exact as much economic cost through the Straits of Hormuz, the United States has the ability to extract much greater economic costs on Iran than Iran has on an ability to extract costs on us or on our friends in the world. So I hope that they're smart. The president has set a deadline for about 12 hours from now in the United States. We're going to find out, but there's going to be a lot of negotiation between now and then, and I'm hopeful that it gets to a good resolution.
You did say that the military objectives of this war have been achieved. So could you help us understand why the president is still threatening to attack every bridge and every power plant in Iran?
So you asked about Karg Island. My understanding, having talked to Pete and General Kane about this, is that we were going to strike some military targets on Karg Island. I believe we have done so. The president's deadline has been followed by us and everybody else, and he said very clearly, we're not going to strike energy and infrastructure targets until the Iranians either make a proposal that we can get behind or don't make a proposal, but he's given them until Tuesday at 8 o'clock. So I don't think the news in Karg Island represents a change in strategy or represents any change from the President of the United States. He continues to say the deadline is 8 o'clock, and the deadline is for what? Fundamentally, what Iran is trying to do, because they've been defeated militarily, is they're trying to extract as much economic pain on the world as possible. And the President of the United States is a man who recognizes leverage, that if the Iranians want to exact a certain amount of pain, the United States has the ability to exact much, much greater pain. The President doesn't want to do that. I don't want to do that. That's why we're negotiating so aggressively. But fundamentally, the ball is in the Iranians' court. Now, I think the president has talked about this. One thing I will say is that the Iranians were not the fastest negotiators before the war started, and they are certainly not the fastest negotiators now. So we recognize there's some delay sometimes in transmitting messages from one person to another, but we feel confident that we can get a response, whether it's positive or negative. We're going to get a response from the Iranians by 8 o'clock tonight. I hope they make the right response, because what we really want is we want a world where oil and gas is flowing freely, where people can afford to heat their homes and cool their homes, where people can afford to transport themselves to work. That's not going to happen if the Iranians are engaged in acts of economic terrorism. So they've got to know we've got tools in our toolkit that we so far haven't decided to use. The President of the United States can decide to use them, and he will decide to use them if the Iranians don't change their course of conduct.
the ships that have been able to pass the Strait of Hormuz are just reaching Europe. Now that there is no oil coming from Russia or from Middle East, what do you think will happen with Europe, with Hungary?
My attitude towards military conflict has always been to pray that we're on God's side. And my own view is that we're doing this for the right reasons. We're doing this because we don't want a regime that has committed acts of terrorism to have the world's most dangerous weapon, because that would mean a lot of innocent people dead. I certainly hope that God agrees with the decision that Iran shouldn't have a nuclear weapon, but I'll keep praying about it. And if he gives me a good answer, you'll be the first to know, Natalie. Thank you all. Thanks, Victor. Thank you.
$25 करोड़ गरीब गरीबी को परास्त करके बाहर निकले।
For the good of our nation, let's work together and let's truly make America great again.
The fastest news breaks.
Requested PM saying that look, you will have to speak to Putin and to Zelensky.
The biggest news makers.
The relationship with India is probably the most important bilateral relationship the U.S. will have for the rest of this century.
The capital delivered quite an election result today.
Expert analysis.
The million-dollar question today is how to stop this dance of death.
Ground reports.
I'm standing at the crossroad of the Kumbh Mela. Behind me are more than 100 entry ghats.
Long-form interviews.
Exclusionary politics is reflected in Manipur case as well. You don't bother because this is a small state.
Deep dive into burning issues.
It's often said DRC could be the richest country in the whole world. It's because of what sits underneath.
Why exactly did the US topple the Sheikh Hasina government?
HT videos. We don't just break news, we break it down.